we know that you guys won the Think Award last year, and I just kind of wanted to ask more like what you feel like helped you win that, and like what you feel was the most impactful towards that.
So during our judging sessions, we focus a lot on our engineering process and the whole like designing process. And our process is called MGH, or like map, generate, hone. And we go off of that. So when we're designing something, we first like map it out and whatever. And like it's either drawing and then we generate it on CAD or however we need to in prototype, and then hone it. Honing is just like implementing it onto our robot and testing it out. And we go through this process like many times to refine it and iterate it. And we talk about iterations and especially in our last year's portfolio, we talked about iterations on like every subsystem of our robot. This year, we're also making sure like we go through this process. I think like being like strict about going through the process and then documenting it really well, like as you're doing it, and then like formatting it like later, that is like has been successful for us.
Sonia said, I think our engineering notebook also played a big role. We have really in-depth iteration documentation for each of our subsystems in our notebook, and that gives us a great resource to show judges.
Oh, so going into that iteration, what specifically do you put down for your iterations in terms of like your testings that like led to these changes? Like, do you include any of the science or math behind it?
Depending on what it is. So personally, for my part, what I did last year was in the notebook, we went really in depth on like the different features of this iteration. So like what we changed from the last iteration, or if it was like the first one, then like what we're trying to create, like the problem that we're solving is a big one. Because like essentially like why are you making this piece? And then we talked about what we did to test it and like what were the outcomes, so like if it worked or if it didn't work. And then in the portfolio, we tried to confine that a little bit more and talked about like key features and then areas for improvement. And then basically it would just be a picture and then the areas for improvement and key features and then the next iteration. So we would show not all the iterations because some of our parts had a lot, but we would focus on maybe just like 4 or 5, maybe not even 5, maybe just like 4 iterations to give the judges like from where we started to like what we have now.
So this is our notebook.
A lot more in depth about everything, and then the portfolio only had like a few iterations.
So notebook, first off, it goes through all of the iterations, right? We walk through that map, generate, hone, so our design process inside the notebook slides themselves. So up here we've got map, so we've got problem, constraints, designs considered, reason why we chose it. A lot of that comes back to game strategy, right? We've got a whole portfolio page on math and a whole portfolio page on game strategy. Judges have told us that they love those sections. So generate section, generate hone section. You don't need to go through the full sketching process every time. Just show that you did think through your designs before you're actually making them.
Kickoff, you did a little presentation on like documentation for like beginner teams. Can you just tell me like what led to like the inspiration of doing that presentation, but also what you mainly wanted to highlight as like most important in that presentation?
The main reason we chose to do it is because we felt that like our documentation is our strongest part of our team, and it's like easier to like communicate rather than like programming or something else like that. But we focused on just like, first of all, like what a portfolio is, because like for rookie teams, they might not know, and then like the requirements and such. And then also like what to include. We talked about how we format our pages and like just like little tips and tricks on like how to make your pages cleaner, because there are a lot of teams that do have good content, but they don't have like the right formatting. And so we talked about like the color contrast that we use between like using our colors and also like including photos and including stats, and as we talked about before, iterations. So it was just mainly to address like what can be included in the portfolio for teams who don't really know.
I like that. That's always seems to be a difficult place to start, is with the documentation.
For sure.
I feel like one of the things we do differently than other teams is that other teams, they tend to structure their portfolio around awards. But then for us, we just put on whatever we feel like we did best, and then we try to work the awards out of that instead of going into it with awards from the start.
Is there any like specific like tips or tricks aside from what you've already mentioned that like you found were like really impactful like when making the notebook and like really helped like drive the process?
I think one of the things for the notebook is that like all of our pages are format, or at least like our outreach pages, they're all formatted the same way so that it's really easy to like just create a notebook page after every event because it's the same format.
Do you apply that same format or like a similar formatting at least to your design as well?
Yeah, our design format is like we also apply like the generate hone. That's kind of like our format for the design parts.
For the terms of notebook, at least, we just have a template we can copy and paste for every individual outreach event. In terms of unique portfolio design, I think we try to put our most impactful stuff first, right? So the high level stuff, last year we were really proud of our advocacy outreach. So we put that in one of the first sections. And then we've got a high level overview of our robot coming first in order to sort of lead into everything else.
Thank you so much. Well, it was lovely getting to talk to you guys, and this was just overall like really amazing getting to talk to you. And definitely a lot of things were brought up that I really wouldn't have thought about before. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for meeting with us as well.